Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Corona Chronicles Live. I am really excited to have my next guest, Scott Mason, here with me. A little history about us. We actually were connected through Oleg Lahid. And the conversation is one, I had the first opportunity of offending him when we were talking because I said, has anybody ever told you that you look like
No, I can't take the memory.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. But anyway, so we got off to a great start, needless to say, because it's all about being real. It's all about
Totally.
not having any expectations, but just saying what's on our heart and learning from it. We have these times that we get together on Saturdays with Oleg's direction. And, we just never know what we are going to end up talking about, how we're going to grow. And, that's really the basis of our connection. So, I am so excited to have him here with me today and give you guys an opportunity to see his insight because it's just amazing the things that we end up diving into. So before we get into that, let me give Scott the floor so that he can introduce himself.
Thank you. First of all, it is a true honor to be here. Anytime I am in the house with America's Supermom, I am in a good space in life. And no, I do not look like Lionel Richie. Those words will never be uttered in my presence again by anybody. So I am the owner of Scott Mason LLC, which provides business consulting services for business owners that are looking to grow, scale, and sustain their business. I also am a motivational speaker and a podcaster. I speak around issues relating to people connecting to their higher purpose so that they can build a better self and then a better world. And my podcast is called The Purpose Highway. And that's what I'm about: connection with the higher purpose, building a better self. And most importantly, it's not just about our inner selves. It's about building a better world too.
I love that. And, this is such a great topic because so many people are in this space of not really, we had it before where we didn't know our purpose, but now
Yeah.
with, this a career that you might have had for so long or this routine that you've built up, with in the constraints of your own family, career, and things like this are now being totally transformed and
Yeah.
people are losing their sense of identity based on the roles that they used to play being eliminated.
Yeah.
So when it comes to knowing your purpose, many people out here listening, what are some ways that they can get started on that journey of really identifying what their purpose is?
I will start with a little story about that might explain some of that. I co-owned a printing company for years until about the end of 2019. My business partner and I had different visions for the direction of the company. I wanted it to grow and scale far beyond what it was. He did not want that. And so we simply could not stay together as business partners with completely opposite visions for the company's future. We had an amicable separation, and we agreed that due to the fact that I had multiple careers before this, I should be the one who would be bought out and move on to a different adventure in life. And I went through a period where I was asking myself, Lachelle, over and over, what is my purpose? Because, this is my chance to really pursue that, really reinvent my life and have it be everything that I imagined that it would be. And I will never forget, I live near Central Park in New York City. I got on a bike with my glasses on one night when it was raining and started riding through the park. And I was thinking about, I have certain skills and talents and, a professional history. How do I figure out what my purpose is? I can't figure out how to leverage what I bring to the table to get me where I want to go. And Lachelle, on that bicycle ride, I had a moment of clarity where inside my mind, I realized it's not about where I want to be, where I need to be, or where I want to go. It was about how can what I've been given in my life be of service. And I will never forget this moment as long as I live, because my mindset changed. Tears started coming out of my eyes. It was ridiculous. I couldn't even control it. And there I was in the rain at night on a bicycle with foggy glasses and tears coming down. I'm lucky that story didn't end right then and there. I'm lucky I didn't find out that my purpose was to crash into a tree and die in some park. But, that is the thing that I recommend that people do. Say, remove the ego from it. Say, it's not about what I want. It's not about what I think I should be. It's not about what I expect. It's about what I call providence. Other people call God. Other people call the universe. They may conceptualize it in any number of ways. But for me, it was diving into a providential stream and letting that take me. And when I threw my wants and desires out the table and committed to my gifts being of service to others, suddenly things accelerated quickly. And there's accelerating even more and more and more the more I commit to that. So that's the answer to it. There are a zillion different tools and tactics and strategies that you can use. Those are of interest, but our mindset has to be in the space, I believe, of service to the world.
I love
those things have any meaning.
Yeah. Now, so you mentioned dropping the ego. I've done some different videos in the past about that. But for somebody who's listening, because it becomes a part of us so much that we kind of don't even realize that it's there. Yeah. So the fact that you bring that up is very key, because that's one of the things that we have to transform away from in order to, that's going to be the thing that's going to give us that courage to just jump, to not be so conscious about this and that working out just so. Yeah. So when it comes to dropping the ego, what advice would you give them? What does that look like? What are some things that they can practice for that to take place?
So someone who is as young as you might not remember the era of records, but you may have read about them, and many of your listeners may be aware of them.
You're so sweet. I know all about records.
Now, records, as those of us who are old enough to remember them know, right? They are on a turntable and there's a needle on them. And that needle on that vinyl is how I conceptualize our inner voice. It's a recording, or it's something talking to us. And if you're saying, I want, I need, or if you're starting to find yourself jealous, envious, or attempting to control an outcome, that is the trigger in the mind that the ego record is on. I consider for myself the ego record to be dirge-like, even if it sounds upbeat or empowering, because at the end of the day, it ultimately leads us nowhere but to self-limitation, or in the worst case scenario, our own destruction. It certainly keeps us from being able to tap into what the universe itself wants. So I literally, in my mind, when I began, I committed to acknowledging that when it was going to happen. One of the consequences of that was when I started to acknowledge it and commit to doing something about it, I noticed it all the time. So one has to understand that when you commit to making a change of this sort of thing, you're going to see it everywhere you go all the time. And it's going to drive you crazy until you develop the habit of getting away from it. But then the other thing that I try and do is, when I do recognize it, literally in my mind, imagine that needle coming off and going onto that joyful Donna Summer single that is full of bounce and life and fun and joy, and is taking you where the rhythm wants you to go. When you've got a good, upbeat, fun music on, if that's what you like, it's almost like the music moves you. You're in, right, Grace Jones, right, said you're subservient to the rhythm. And I think that that's exactly how I envision an egoless approach to our mindset. You become you let yourself be in submission to where the world wants to be, or to what others need. And it becomes easier and easier. And then a different sort of joy fills you.
I love that. And, so you mentioned the control aspect, or, certain outcomes, right? So how do you practice that today? Because, I always talk to my kids. It's like, look, if I just know that I want this outcome, I'm not leaving room for anybody to come and collaborate with that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, what's the point? Because
Yeah.
there's no room for that person. It's the outcome I want.
Yeah.
So how do you practice being not married to the outcomes and open for newness and collaboration and things of that nature?
Yeah. In my case, recognizing that letting go of the control opens the door to fear, and having trust that the removal of the fear will not jeopardize my ultimate fate with regards to whatever it is that I'm moving towards. And I'm finding that to actually be true.
Mm-hmm.
In ancient mythology, as well actually as in, a lot of sacred texts, there are stories about prophets who say this and this terrible thing is going to happen to you. And the person that hears it always would try and avoid it. And by avoiding or by attempting to avoid the prophecy, they actually make it come true. Part of the reason I believe that those stories have resonated through the centuries is that they're telling a fundamental truth. By avoiding the outcome, the person who's hearing the prophecy is attempting to control it. And that creates the very thing they're running from. So I say, take a lesson from these ancient stories. They've lasted for thousands of years in some cases because they actually resonate. There's real truth in it. I think that that's, to me, a big thing. Understanding that anytime I'm attempting to navigate towards something, even if it's subconsciously, it's because of my own fear of what the outcome is. That's what these people, they hear the prophecy, they're scared of it, so they try and avoid it. Well, maybe if they let go of the fear and just let whatever happen, the prophecy would have been thwarted. In any event, that's number one, letting go of that fear. And then number two, you said a great point, which is, in our mindset, are we thinking purely about our own self-interest, or are we thinking about ourselves in connection with our purpose and in connection with each other? We are all social creatures. The only reason we have purpose is because of our connection to other people. There's no purpose for anything if we are existing in utter isolation in the universe. Like what
I gotta write that down. Yes.
Oh, good. If I give a quote of the day, then my day has been made. And so if we understand that, then the idea of thinking about your actions impact on other people is a huge deal. It's connected to why we exist. And what you said is right, like, it's so true. Not giving people room to have their own space to exist. Creative possibilities only happen when there are synergies, and they're certainly maximized when there's an exchange of ideas, there's an exchange of flow, there's an exchange of energy, there's an exchange of laughter, as you and I tend to do a lot. That's the birth of creativity. And when you let people have the space to be offering that out, your own creativity and energy optimizes. It's powerful stuff.
Optimize it. Here we go. We optimize it.
Our
yes.
favorite word.
That's a little inside joke, y'all. If you want to know, come to these Saturday Courageous Conversations. We'll put the link in the show notes. But so how did you get to this space? My journey was one with depression, 13 years going in a circle and figuring out this wasn't the right way. With your, acumen, how did you get to be where you are with this reality? Because some people are they know that there's something different, but they're just like, how do I get to where you're at?
Yeah. And I have had that. I think some of it was that I have, come from a very, very unusual background. I was born in England. I had a biological mother who was a British woman studying in graduate school. My biological father was a Trinidadian man who was in law school. They had an affair. A biracial, child that was that was illegitimate was kind of not acceptable. So I was put up for adoption quite quickly and adopted by African Americans here in the United States. And I grew up in the Midwest. And I grew up in the Midwest as a biracial child raised by two Black people who was gay. Like everyone in my life was like, who in the heck is this person? How does he even exist? Why is he here? And Lachelle, I remember I would like go into the creek behind the house where I lived, and I'd pick up crawdads or look in the fields for turtles. And then I would jog in the cornfields at night, and I would look up at the sky, and I'd say to myself, there has to be something more for me than this. There has to be. And I came here to New York City through dint of luck and a lot of hard work. But I had challenges in my career. I was hyper ambitious, hyper growth oriented, hyper determined to make something of myself and make it on my own terms. I felt very strongly I have to be the one who controls my own fate. There's nothing else besides my ability to forge my future. And I kept butting my head against the wall. All that happened was I got angrier and angrier. I had a huge force of will, but I wasn't surrendering. And obstacles just kept coming. Everything seemed harder and harder and harder until finally, over time, it began to implode back in on me. But when that began to implode back on me, I hit a space where really psychologically, emotionally, the only thing I could do would say, I've got to change my life. And I think, again, Providence brought people into my life at that point who said, Scott, maybe you should consider this pathway to self-development. With me, it was martial arts I got involved in. That the person that taught me said, this is a metaphor for personal development. I had scoffed at personal development people that were all interested in developing their feelings and getting in touch with them, all that sort of stuff. I thought they were weak. I thought they were fools, all this sort of stuff. Here I am now talking to you and looking back with disbelief that that's where I was coming from. But, you have to endure these things and hit a difficult place in your life sometimes before you're ready to make that change.
I love that, and I think, so many of us are in that space. It's not that particular journey, but we all go through that whole period of, recognizing we need to change. Something's not right. We're not in alignment. All these different things that kind of get us grounded to where we are today. So what is it that you do in your daily routine that keeps you in the space? Because, we've got these elections coming up. There's racial tension. All these different things to me are negative, so how do you stay in this space with this energy, enthusiasm, and everything that you have to offer? How do you stay like that with all this going on?
Well, first of all, I surround myself with Lachelle Adkinses. You and all of the other people with your energy, right? And I found that the more and more I move into this world and into the circle, a lot of the people that had energy that I'll best describe as challenging or not moving me towards purpose gradually sort of filter away anyway. So I get more and more and more Lachelles out there. And that energizes you. If I'm around people, look at that. Look at you smiling like that. Like, how am I not going to be energized? That's number one. Number two, the connection with purpose that I feel itself is energizing. Whereas before, different periods in my life, Sunday night, I used to view as sad times, or I viewed going to work as just a burden. Now I wake up, bam, boom, I'm ready to go. And I start many days at 7 o'clock. Today I started at 7 a.m. I'll be done, 9:30, 10 tonight. That's cool. The purpose, the connection with that, everything is driving you. I'm not even driving myself, really. Like I said, this providential stream is pushing me. So I have the energy and the positivity, whether I want it or not. I don't even really, if I get sick, it's super minor. It comes and it goes. That's weird. That was not the way it was for decades of my life. Finally, every single day, I find time, even during the worst of COVID. Like I mentioned earlier, I live near Central Park. During the worst of COVID, they were building hospital beds in Central Park, not that far away from my house. It was grim, but still every day I managed to put on my headphones, put on some good EDM music with a beat, walk for an hour, get myself peace, clarity, as well as some exercise. And whether, a lot of people will do that through yoga, they'll do it through meditation, through just free thinking. But those are the sorts of things that make sure that help you stay positive. Being intentional, understanding, by the way, I learned this through the martial arts. Positivity is itself self-discipline. To me, letting myself slip into negativity, crabbiness, all that sort of stuff is letting go of my own self-discipline around my emotional state. And I can tell from the nod that you can relate.
I'm
There you
writing
go,
that
laughing
down.
again, getting me all happy. And I'm sure the people
Positivity.
watching are smiling too.
That was a nugget right there. So I hope they were writing that down. Positivity is self-discipline. This is
Truly.
true. I mean, because people are like, how do you maintain the smile? You got them kids at home and you're doing this, but I don't watch the news. I don't engage in certain things because I recognize that I could, but then I'm falling into this trap that is not what I want to continue in my life. And so I love that you say it's self-discipline because it's work, it's intentionality to stay in that positive space. So that's a great nugget
Well,
that you
and
shared.
I think that you're right about being careful about the news too, right? The commercial news, its mission is to inform, but it is powered by the desire to get ad space. And so they need to get people addicted. And so it's hyper emotional, it's hyper partisan, it's hyper inflammatory, and that's very much by design. The advertisers want that so that you'll have your eyes glued to the set. And you're right. I mean, we're living in a time of profound division, particularly around race, but around social stature and economics and all of that, trade, immigration, all of that sort of stuff, demonization of each other, which these sort of inflammatory approaches to the news can seep into our mental state, and they affect us subconsciously. And I think that you're absolutely right. Sting, I read the headlines. That's it. I don't want to walk around some enraged person. And even the most strong of us, it'll affect. It's insidious.
So true. Now, so talk to us about the podcast. We just have a few minutes. I know you have another appointment. So I
Oh,
want to
no.
make sure that.
Thank you. So the podcast is basically a series of interviews that are personal in nature with entrepreneurs and thought leaders like
That is-
Lachelle Adkins. Name
I love
one.
it.
So basically are talking around this theme of, again, connection to purpose. Now, there are 10 general themes related to that we try and focus on. So some of them are things like adventurous pursuit of life, really being inclusive of all who are willing to walk on that journey towards purposefulness, having a sense of humor and the importance of that, making sure that we understand that the minute one leg of our life journey ends, another begins, and embracing that and accepting it. Those are some of the themes that we talk about over time. And we're hoping that by hearing people's journeys to overcome whatever obstacles they had or limitations, and to move to a place of connection, and then hearing about the impact that we've had on people's lives, that has had on people's lives, will inspire people to be able to connect to their own purpose, or at least seek out ways for them to do it. And by the way, having a diversity of guests allows people to hear a diversity of philosophies around how exactly to make that connection to your purpose.
I love that. So, the last question I would conclude with is, you're really doing a lot of activity on LinkedIn.
Yes.
What are some tips that you could give somebody to, increase their awareness, with their profile, or I don't know, any tips you could give us for LinkedIn? Because a lot of people are like, I don't know, I'm not really into LinkedIn. They're not real familiar. So, you're doing a great job. So give us a few tips.
Yep. So I will give you a couple of practical tips from people that are a lot wiser and savvier than me that I've shared that have been effective. And then I'll talk about something a little bit more existential.
Okay.
The practical ones are to make sure that you're directly uploading your content, not sharing it. And then to also, utilize 3 to 7 or so hashtags, not to overdo it, to not have links to external websites in your post, but to have them be comments after the post, because LinkedIn apparently de-algorithmizes, if there's such a word, those posts that have the links within them, because they want you to stay on that platform. And then the other thing too, I would suggest is to actively engage with other people, so you come to their mind, and by actively engage, it means not just liking, but if you have time to comment as much as possible, so that you come to the attention of the people that you're commenting on, and you're top of mind with whatever they're seeking. So those are the practical tips that I've received, and you model it yourself. I mean, your content is good, it's interesting, and you're generous in terms of how you interact with others. So anyone watching your own content would end up with a happy outcome. More existentially, I was nervous about beginning to post regularly on LinkedIn because I've been told that my look, my demeanor, all of that is edgy. I'm not a stuffy person. You're never going to catch me, wearing suits and, being some boring lawyerish sort of lecturer. And that's just not me. And so I felt, okay, I'm too rough around the edges. I'm too, weird to be on LinkedIn. But people
with my red, white, and blue hat. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. But my freak show self, some people said, that's actually going to be good because you will stand out from the clutter. You will be authentic. And authenticity on LinkedIn is mattering more and more and more because there's 10 zillion people wearing suits just talking about the same old thing. Those hats, Lachelle, and your demeanor stand out. I notice them. I can see right now. Even branding yourself as America's Supermom. I keep saying that over and over because it's so memorable. It's not boring. People are going to be more attached to something that's not boring if it's authentic. And so bringing Scott Mason with his suspenders and his loud mouth and the crazy hand motions and all of that is authentic, and it seems to work, just as I remember things about you, because you bring that to the table. So I would say, don't be afraid to bring your full self to the table. The more personal you are, the more authentic you are, the more people are going to pay attention to you.
I love that.
Right? None of us like to be bored.
Yeah. And, I came up with this quote where it was like, the more you speak your truth, you'll never be at a loss for words. So you always can show up wherever you are because it's your truth. So, it's not like, and this is true because wherever you're on the podcast or you're doing a video or whatever, the more authentic you are, the more that shows through everywhere you go. So that's just phenomenal that you would say that.
And I will just say very briefly, I recently read that people that present as themselves authentically and stand out from the crowd, people actually perceive as more powerful because the people perceiving them believe that they must have power in order to get away with just being themselves out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's a great thing. So, hey, I hope y'all were taking some notes. So what's the best way for the audience to get a hold of you?
www.speakerscott.com. www.speakerscott.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and we can be connected through you, smason1, and on Instagram, s.scott_Mason.
Love it. And any final words you want to share?
Connect to your purpose, build a better self, and a better world will come.
All right. You heard it here. Well, thanks so much, Scott, for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Guys. Yes, you are so welcome. Thank you guys for joining us. And we're going to have him come back once he gets his podcast up and running so he can give us some more tips on podcasting, because that was going to be a great thing. Loving his energy. Hope you guys were taking notes. Reach out to him. Definitely a great person to connect to. And we look forward to seeing y'all the next time. Thank y'all for watching.